can't see. I can't see. I got my eyes shut.
Idiot, you. What's wrong with you?
And there we are, Charles.
Awesome.
Happy Superb Owl Sunday.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I don't know.
Is that some kind of a game or something that's happening today?
You forgot your football helmet, Charles.
I'm wearing it.
What football helmet?
What football helmet exactly? I'm wearing it. Don't you see it?
Yes, it's one of those invisible ones, the new safety-oriented invisible football helmets. Well, you know, Charles, one of our viewers is in the comments early demanding that the government legalize shemp.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea. I really like that. Thank you, Jacob, for that bit of advice. But yeah, a little special opening for Superb Owl Sunday. I don't know how many viewers of Sunday with Charles are actually Superb Owl viewers or football fans, but I guess everybody kind of watches it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of fun. It can be amusing for the halftime show. The first half doesn't really matter. And then, you know, it's the final minutes of the game that matter, if anything, in quotes, matters about it.
Yeah.
But the level of, I mean, sometimes the level of play in that game is really amazing, and sometimes it's just, you know, like watching paint dry. I mean, there's not that interesting.
Yeah. I mean, football in general is not that interesting to me. It seems like a bunch of criminals playing a child's game for millions of dollars.
Well, that would be Congress.
Congress, right. Well, it's true. Congress is at least smart enough to not beat up their wives in elevators on camera.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Do it behind closed doors or whatever.
That's true.
So, Charles, it's the 140th show today.
Amazing.
They've only done like 70 Superb Owls, or how many have they?
Not even 53.
Whatever. We're beating them.
Almost triple.
Exactly.
Where's your ring? For that matter, where's my ring?
I don't know.
Super Bowl, Superb Owl ring.
Well, right.
Actually, I could tell a funny vignette on that subject. So I was in the business. Well, the last business venture I did involved getting a whole bunch of investors from around the world, including one cadre of experienced executives who could help us find deals and help us when we
Cadre West.
Cadre West, anyway. And so in that whole process, this person, you know, a friend of mine called me up and said, listen, there's this guy, you know, and he's a retired athlete, and you know, you really should, he wants to invest in your firm. Would you meet with him?
O.J. Simpson.
Much better than that. So, so I didn't even know exactly who he was. He shows up at my office, and he's a tall white guy, but he was not, you know, like gigantic, and he was not, you know, all beefed up or whatever. I mean, he just looked like an older businessman. And we're sitting there, and you know, I'm in a lot of hurry to do a whole bunch of stuff, so I give him a quick view of what I'm trying to do, and I said, "Do you have any questions?" And he, you know, he said, "Yeah." He asked me a bunch of questions. I tried to answer him, and then he's like, "Don't you want to know anything about me?" And I'm like, "Not really," but anyway. So you know, that's what I noticed that he had, you know, on his hands, which were quite large. He had this massive ring. And so I said, all right, yeah, Andy Russell is the guy's name, you know. He was on I think he was defensive co-captain of the Super Bowl winning Pittsburgh Steelers. There's something called, I think, the Steel Curtain. He was one of these famous guys. Anyway, so he goes through, you know, this thing, I went to college and actually Missouri.
Oh, perhaps he knows Truman the Tiger.
Yeah, and he said, and I said to him, like the idiot that I can be, I said, oh, I think they have a pretty good football team. Yeah, I was captain of it.
Wow.
And he said, oh yeah, so what'd you do after that? Did you go into professional sports? He's like, yeah, I was on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, how is that better than O.J.?
Well, football players will tell you this guy, Andy Russell, is a legend. I mean, he's, being the idiot that I am, I had no clue who he was. I didn't even know about the. No, he's a very nice guy. And Andy was an interesting guy because he figured out early on that he was going to have a lot of time on his hands between, you know, football seasons, and he didn't want to just, you know, do nothing. So he got involved in investing and brokerage and this and that. He made a lot of money on top of the money that he made as a football player. Plus, he's got a very good set of instincts and was quite helpful.
Well, that's good. Too often we hear about famous sports stars and athletes who just basically burn all their money and go out of business.
Exactly, and burn their other people's money as well. So, I mean, now that the danger for the art department is once the audience sees what you could do here, I mean, you've really outdone yourself for this one.
Well, thank you, Charles.
And, it'll be fun to, I think this, what's that line from Seinfeld? Who are these people you speak of?
These Stooges.
The Stooges. Who are these Stooges?
I don't know if you know this, Charles, but the Three Stooges were one of my early inspirations in 3D.
I didn't know that. No.
Yes, actually, so we've titled today's episode Spooky Dudes, and actually the Three Stooges have made two separate 3D Three Stooges. I don't know if they're really movies, they're sort of like short segments. I guess when they first started, they were shown at the head of movies as kind of like an intro. They were not on TV, but who knew, they were ahead of their time. It's the perfect length for YouTube. But in the beginning of the movie Fort Ticonderoga, there was a Three Stooges short called Spooks, which was filmed in 3D and was one of the best made 3D movies maybe ever. The photography is beautiful. I won't go into details about it, but it's very hard to find now in 3D.
When were the Stooges, when did they come into prominence? Was it the 30s or before that?
I don't know. Maybe vaudeville first, but this one that I'm talking about was 1954, I think.
54, okay.
Yeah, so perhaps they spanned decades, and I think they started in vaudeville, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, I think actually it's a sad place we're in, but I think that if you took the Democratic Party candidates and you forced them to watch every single Three Stooges short and movie or whatever,
did it increase their IQ?
You would increase their IQ points. And they know a lot more about the economy and geopolitics than these idiots seem to know.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, you've created another comprehensive presentation for us today. Perhaps we should
jump right into it. Yeah. So what we are trying to do here, this is a big topic and a big effort. When we go back to the very beginning, what we were trying to do is move the gigantic number of people who actually are aware of the Clintons and their impact on, and the Obamas and Bushes and their impact on the 200 nations of the world, to try to get them to throw away this idea that the Clinton Foundation there was more good than bad, and appreciate that it's the largest set of unprosecuted charity frauds ever attempted in history.
Right.
And so to do that, you really, it's like, how does flowing water tear down a wall? It just takes a while. The water comes and it comes, and and that's what we're trying to do with all these episodes. We started early on with episodes that focused on small elements. We drilled into those elements. We got people to appreciate that, if you think about, for example, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, that's yet another fraud, a fraud in which a very smart group of investors has managed to become billionaires, but along the way they've done incredible damage to philanthropy emanating out of the UK and the US via their funds. We started on that was, I think, our first one that we dug into, and then we took as many different pieces of this to drill down in depth as we could. And the sad thing about this fraud, and perhaps for us the good thing about the fraud, is it's so big, there's so much going on, it involves so many facets that you could always come up with something new to talk about every few days. And then, ultimately when these people do, as I believe they shortly will, when they do get convicted and have to give up their shit because they're going to be going to prison where you can't buy, I don't think Bill smokes yet, and Hillary.
I was going to say, cigarettes are currency. He's going to have to keister them.
So what we're going to do here is take you to a very interesting place, which is that place of saying, we brought to your attention, to the viewership, the fact that there are these various FBI vault files. In particular, we'll have links to one set of them in a few minutes. But what if you didn't even need to do any of that work to see that it was a fraud by February 15th, 2001? What if actually, this whole FBI vault exercise, this whole investigation has basically been a distraction? Because instead of focusing on the period October 23rd, 1997, when the thing was organized, until early February, when people across the political spectrum, 2001, were up in arms over Bill pardoning not just Pincus Green and Mark Rich, but a whole bunch of other people, including
Freeway Rick Ross
and his brother, Roger Clinton, and many others. There was such an uproar early in February 2001 that, really dopey James Comey was not necessary when he got involved late in December 2001. Mueller didn't need to even show up at the FBI by September 4th, 2001. And Rosenstein could have kept his day job doing whatever he was doing instead of, going into the tax department at the Justice Department, because we're going to show you today that there was enough evidence by February 2001 and shortly thereafter to lock these people up and throw away the key back in 2001.
No sensible prosecutor would do that.
Yeah,
Charles.
of course not. So
they don't want their dogs to show up dead.
Right, exactly. And so what really needs to happen here, and I think also while we've been doing all this broadcasting, we comment on the status, in quotes, of the Mueller investigation. I think the public is growing to appreciate just how cockamamie the Mueller investigation is. It flouts accepted practice, where they jump down Manafort's and Stone's business, and they just give Hillary and Obama and Bush, yeah, whatever. So we really need to go back over and establish just how unequal the administration of justice has been. And I'm pleased to see more and more leading light type people who are, get a lot of prominence on mainstream television, like Tom Fitton and others, really pounding the table and saying, this Mueller investigation is a poster child for prosecutorial malfeasance and illegality,
unprecedented,
and it cannot stand. And I'm pleased to see our friend Sidney Powell, who I've had the fortune of knowing since about 2014. She is now regularly on this Mark Levin show. I think she was on Saturday, and we corresponded by email, and she has graciously agreed to come and help the viewership understand just how far off kilter the Mueller investigation is. And she has, of course, years of experience working, watching Mueller and what's the guy's name? Weissman and Mueller and sadly Christopher Wray and other members of the Enron task force take justice and just shred it.
Yeah.
So that is, as our president likes to say, not good.
Right. Well, she's amazing. She's got her Creeps on a Mission website, which has its own fantastic art department. And Sidney Powell has, anytime she comes out with something, it's always kind of like super duper on the ball. And people go to creepsonamission.com, get her book, Licensed to Lie.
You know what she should, or maybe you could do this. You could take this Creeps on a Mission thing, and you could turn it so it spins like a Wheel of Fortune, and it lands.
Pick the creep.
Yeah.
He's got the dossier there. A lot of good stuff in the License to Lie book and Creeps on a Mission. I definitely look forward to having Sidney on the show. She was in the roundtable that we did at the event in Dallas with Robin Gritz and Scott Bennett and Kevin Shipp.
If we could just move this up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. So I actually have been fielding phone calls and different types of calls in the last 2 weeks or so from around the world, from people who are waking up. I won't say which countries, but they're actually watching this and watching developments very closely. And what I believe will prove to be the story is that elder Bush, then Clinton, then younger Bush, then Barack Obama got together, and or their people got together, and in the interest of promoting this unregulated globalist approach, where they and their donors could profit and also avoid prosecution, they may have agreed, we'll overlook this Enron thing and where it would have gone towards Bush. If you overlook the Clinton Foundation thing and where it's going to go, and if you overlook the Obama Foundation, well, let's see, we're former presidents, we're members of that club, we make mistakes, but look at this, years of service, look at the sacrifice, look at it, we can't be attacked for this, let's just have a truce, and I say, and I think you say, and I think our viewership says, bull fucking shit.
Yow.
That's just not right. For the first instance, this idea that former presidents should monetize their service to the degree that a Bill Clinton and now Barack Obama, and to a lesser extent the Bushes have done, is absurd. You know, it's just not right. Either you're serving selflessly and playing for a role in history, playing for the opportunity to stand up and be counted and do what's right to promote America's interests as the President of the United States and not some globalist order's interest, or you're not. You know, and if you're out there, if your real game is to sort of pretend that you're President of the United States when you delegate all your work to minions and then run around the world trying to get speaking deals and book deals and movie deals and investment deals and make sure Chelsea doesn't have to worry about money, and I mean, that's just not the way the system should be set up, particularly because this government that we have, Sean Hannity is fond of talking about the federal government spending $4 trillion, and he misses a very important point, which is that the federal government engages in the process of putting together laws. Money? No, putting together laws that mandate states and local governments to spend money which those states and local governments don't have. So the proper way of looking at it is not simply what are the feds spending, but what is government writ large spending across the United States economy. That's more like $7 trillion. So before we have some nitwit, Minnie Mouse, I occasionally use my cerebral cortex, come in and say we need to spend another $33 trillion.
Did she say 33?
I believe it is 33 for that new.
Oh, for the green. That's such
the green. But I mean, before we have somebody like that start throwing those type of numbers around, and Barack Obama and Jeff Immelt saying, let's spend $1 trillion on this stimulus for shovel-ready jobs that don't exist in 2009. Before we have people do that, you know, the American public has to, you know, stand up and say, oh, wait a minute. There isn't anybody in the world who has anything close to $1 trillion. There's no trillionaire yet, right? There may be families that could have 500 billion, maybe. But $7 trillion in spending per year in one country is an awful lot of money. And for that, we should get more than a t-shirt and a set of excuses, right? We're spending $7 trillion in this country. We don't need somebody who's, you know, major league qualifications is to not even be able to say, you want fries with that? You know, in a waitress job. That is not the kind of inspiration that we need in 2019, 2020. The American public needs to understand we're already spending $7 trillion. How much of that is wasted? How much of that is, you know, carryover from ideas that were tried and failed 60 years ago? And, you know, if it's the case in the global private sector that established company after established company is disrupted by technology, why shouldn't government be disrupted? Why shouldn't we be able to do today in 2019 a lot more with the same money?
For less money.
Or less money, given the tools that every citizen has. You know, so these are big questions. We shouldn't just be sitting there and letting, you know, Nancy Pelosi, who's really a disgrace. I mean, frankly, just say, no wall, but I'll give $150 billion to Iran. You know.
Well, not only that, Tom Fitton had a pretty compelling piece that he put out where he's talking about the misuse of the Air Force. They have certain luxury aircraft for Congress to use, and talking about how Nancy Pelosi was going on vacations and doing these, you know, congressional junkets that are wastes of money and tie up the Air Force, and they're changing things and requesting certain crews and certain types of alcohol to be on the plane.
That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. That's not what they should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if Congress had to live the way Americans lived,
right, a
lot of our problems would have been solved a long time ago. So I'm all for making members of Congress and senators and all but a very small number of people in the executive branch fly commercial. And in not business class.
Put them in a C-130, like cattle.
Put them on Amtrak.
Charles, was I incorrect? Was Freeway Rick Ross not pardoned by Bill Clinton? I might have the wrong guy.
I don't know who Freeway
I may have the wrong guy. Freeway Rick Ross is a cocaine guy from something else, maybe.
No, but Roger Clinton was definitely pardoned by his brother.
And also definitely arrested by the FBI for buying a lot of cocaine in a suitcase.
And by the way, I did actually see a mention of Louis Freeh's book, My FBI.
Oh.
So I went by the Strand, my favorite bookstore, one of my favorite bookstores, I should say, and I got a copy, a hardback version, first edition, for $6.95.
Wow.
Pretty impressive.
Definitely.
But anyway, in there, he reveals in that book, which was published in 2005, that all of those pardons, not just the Mark Rich and Pincus Green, but all of those last-minute pardons did not go through the pardon process.
What do you mean?
There's a pardon. If you want to get somebody pardoned, there's an actual set of regulations and precedents or whatever. And the pardon attorney, the person who should have supervised all that was, guess who?
Vince Foster.
Yeah, right. Eric Holder. He was the one who should have been on top of that, right? So of course it became centrally important under Obama to put him in as Attorney General, right? Because he's got more than egg on face for allowing Bill Clinton to pardon a large number of people outside the process. There's a hue and cry about Mark Rich and Pincus Green. There should have been a bigger hue and cry about why the whole bunch of them sailed through, especially Roger Clinton.
Yeah.
There were others.
There should have to be a reason to pardon someone, like some controversy in the conviction, or the law changed after they, like, why can you just pardon any old criminal? It seems like something not democratic, constitutional, or that a president, it's very king-like. I don't like that presidential pardon.
Right, well, it's in the Constitution, so you can either change it or win an election and put in a whole bunch of Supreme Court justices to tear up the Constitution, which, that nearly did happen.
If a president said, you know what, I think it's time to remove this presidential pardon because it's not American, it's not constitutional, and it's not good, he could do that.
No, you have to amend the Constitution.
You don't think you could convince whoever's in the Supreme Court to do it?
No, I don't. I think it would have to stand. If it's in the body of, but again, neither of us are lawyers. We could debate till the cows come home, though.
I don't have any cows coming home, so we'll just carry on. You know, Charles, today is our 140th episode, and people who want to catch up on some of the work can go to this Sunday with Charles playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. Of course, that's the original home of Crowdsource the Truth. People can also watch all of our videos on Crowdsource the Truth 2, where they can also use Super Chat if they like, although Google takes a lot of that money. This is a great place for investigators and prosecutors to go. They can look at all of the episodes of Sunday with Charles, as well as all of the episodes of Charles Ortel is Closing In. We've got them all here in this handy playlist for people to view.
Yeah, I am very certain I would never have started on this project if I knew it would end up being this many videos. I would
Really?
Well, it's a daunting idea to sit down and try to do 2 hours every few days, this many times. But I think it was the right thing to do. And I actually think over time what's going to happen, and it's a good thing so many of these are out there, now prosecutors, and even before now, prosecutors and regulators around the world are going to be shamed into doing something about it. Because if they don't, certain matters are in motion now, and people are not going to be given a chance of saying, I'm in the ostrich party, I'm just going to put my head in the sand and pretend that, let's say picking on the government of Sweden, that we didn't give this fraud any money at crucial moments when it didn't exist, or say the government of Australia or New Zealand, or we could go on, scream like Howard Dean, which I'm not going to do. But there are a lot of people in government who have sent, frankly, sent billions of dollars towards something whose original and only authorized purpose was to put up a building in Little Rock, in a certain portion of Little Rock, to house presidential records and let scholars study them. And that was to cost, originally the estimate was $100 million. So why has this sucker raised over $3 billion officially? Just doesn't make sense.
Is there a high concentration of scholars in Little Rock?
There are actually.
Well, they can study the golf course on the roof of the building.
No, they can't.
Why not?
No, we've had some communications. I won't say exactly how, but that penthouse apartment and the rooftop garden is closed to the public.
Oh, right. You told me that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It certainly is. People should be hopping mad about it.
It's not what's supposed to happen, right?
You can't do that. I mean, they've done it, but you basically, when you set up a presidential foundation, what you do is you go and you buy some land, and then you get your donors yourself. You put up some structures on land that you own 100%, and then you mosey on down to the National Archives and you say, I want to
stuff a few documents in your trousers.
No, you leave that part out. That's the Clinton way. But you play straight up ball, and you say to the National Archives, listen, we've got this thing ready to go to house all these presidential records, which were the records created or received during the presidency of the person involved, and we just want to turn this. Here are the keys, man. It's yours. That's the normal way to do that. Okay, there is an alternative approach, which of course is the way the Clintons would do anything, where you give a partial interest in a building, and there's strict rules about that. You cannot give a partial interest in a massage parlor to the National Archives. It's got to be, the gift has to emanate, in this case, it would have to have emanated from a validly organized and operated, straight up public charity, where the board is independent, where the charter of the charity remains intact, that it follows all law in Little Rock and in any other place where it's solicited or operated anywhere around the world. Only if it does that through the date of donation and then afterwards over the life of the donation, only then is this arrangement a valid legal arrangement. And it's not, because they structured this thing with the Clinton Foundation as a license from the Little Rock-based entity, grants a license to the National Archives to use portions of this building. But in order for that whole arrangement to work, the legal entity that granted the interest in the Little Rock has to remain a validly constituted foundation, which it isn't.
Can't cure that by putting it in an IMAX theater?
You can cure it by going back. Once you invent time travel for all of us, you can take us on your, we'll all get on your Jason's Ark. We'll go back to October 23, 1997, and just sponge all this crap out, clean it up as well. And yeah, you could do it that way, but other than inventing time travel, I don't think there's any way you can get this done.
Doesn't sound like a very good prognosis for them.
No, it doesn't. It's not good at all.
People are wondering, Charles, when will something
Again, if
happen?
I were, if I knew that, I would have retired, in July of 2002. Oh, but wait, I did. No, actually, let's go to the next page.
Sure.
Before we get too much into this, we ought to just remind everybody, and I see you have new viewers. You're up to almost tantalizingly close to 80,000 subscribers. And I guess you're over 10 on 2?
Yeah, Crowdsource the Truth 2 went to about 10,200 viewers, I believe. We've been having a lot of good shows lately. So, as I said before, people can check out Crowdsource the Truth 2 if they... it's really a backup channel in case anything happens to the main channel. But of course, yeah, 10,237, and people who like Super Chat can use the Super Chat feature on there to sponsor the show if they feel like doing that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, so what we try to remind people is this is a new approach, and while it is the case that Jason and I sit here and we chat and you listen, actually in between broadcasts and sometimes during broadcasts, our more active viewers are getting extremely proactive, reaching out to governments, to regulators, to various types of criminal authorities, thinking about civil approaches, professional standards reviews, media approaches. And one of the things, if people have time, and I don't know, Jason, if there's a way to invent this, but it would be interesting to figure out how to have, if the other sides can use bots to send tweets, it seems to me it ought to be possible for somebody who's, anybody is more technologically adept than I am, so I won't use that modifier, for somebody who actually understands technology, to just take the 140 videos and at random figure out how to compose a tweet. You can do that?
I don't know. Tweet them out, you mean with a bot?
Yeah, just relentlessly, each one, hey.
I think people hate that though, and I don't know how to do that. People have accused me of using bots for chatting and whatever, but I have no bots that I'm aware of.
Well, even if it's not a bot, there must be some way of doing it so that I know it is possible, for example, because somebody explained it to me once and I forgot how it works, that you can set tweets up, you can pre-program to go out at certain intervals. So if you were to take the 140 videos and say, hey, dopey James Comey, you should shut your damn pie hole because every time you open your pie hole, you increase your criminal liability. Have you checked this video out? You know, and send that to him, and send it to the IRS, and send it to, you know, a bunch of different people, and just all 140 different people, different ways. I try to send out once a week or so a 10-part tweet, you know, and they seem to get a fair amount of recirculation and retweeting. Yeah. The reason I suggest we think about doing it now is we're pretty close to the Ides of March. Oh, yeah. We're pretty close to April 15th. We're getting close to the final filing deadline, the first final filing deadline for charity. We're getting into extreme jeopardy for the Clinton Foundation because there is, to sort of ape James Comey's commentary, there is no sensible CPA will want to affix his or her name to anything purporting to be an audit for any part of the Clinton Foundation at any time.
That qualifier, Charles, the sensible CPA.
Well, most CPAs are very risk averse.
But what about this guy who's hanging out with the? Oh yeah, don't worry about that. I'm not trying to bring that up. That's what about this is what we're looking at over here. This guy who's always hanging out with
Truman.
Tigers.
Falsman?
Yeah, I'm trying to get your Twitter page up, but it's not cooperating right now. There it is. I don't know. Anyway, forget it. People know they can find you on Twitter, Charles, at Charles Ortel, and you are constantly tweeting useful things that people need to know about. But
trying to do that.
Bring that back sometime later. I should have had that up for you.
That's okay. Anyway, so the approach we take here is to lay out a whole bunch of information for people to check. We're going to do that again today, and you can satisfy your own curiosity that what we're saying is on target. If people have, and occasionally people do make very constructive suggestions and also find errors, and you know, we try to correct errors when we make them. We're human, and we will make errors. People do. But the approach here is very much want to engage the audience, to ask you to, you know, turn on your mind and wrap your mind around the facts. Don't listen just to me and Jason, you know, or other people. Satisfy yourselves about the nature of this fraud. It's not tough to do. Once you get into the rules, once you get into the regulations, once you read the stuff, and then look at what the crap that the Clintons are spewing. I mean, Hillary was just down in Puerto Rico trying to encourage people to send more money to help the people of Puerto Rico who were hurt last year. Why is she going down to Puerto Rico now? Could it be that it's cold in New York? You know, that's a good time.
Just hanging out on Cable Beach. Yeah. Charles, we're being told in the comments here that bots are viewed negatively. It would be better if real people could tweet it.
All right, well, let's...
Life is Now tells us that from Periscope.
Good. Well, if we can find some real people to do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and Periscope is another good thing for people to follow Crowdsource the Truth on, because, you know, there's all this deplatforming going on. So if people are following in lots of different areas, that redundancy is a good way to ensure a more robust platform for delivering this type of information.
Good. Well, with that, why don't we jump into the first slide? So I saw this story whenever it appeared in the last 48 hours or so, in which Trump is quoted as saying, you know, Rosenstein told me I don't have anything to worry about. And I was like,
that, yeah.
Dude, you're supposed to be a lot more cynical than that.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that's not all that smart. I mean, I wouldn't believe, I mean, if Rat Rosenstein walked into this room, I would want 5 independent people to verify that the person claiming to be Rat Rosenstein was in fact Rat Rosenstein. You know, I don't trust anything that man has to say. I think he has a resume that is, the official resume is not, is what, you know, has been adjusted to make very serious defects in the guy's background disappear. And again, I'm deeply troubled why the president, who's supposed to be famously cynical of everything, why at this important moment when Mueller's thing seems to be winding down and when so many people have already been indicted and so many people are being squeezed, why would Donald Trump really believe that Rosenstein has his best interests at heart?
I think a lot of what Donald Trump does is misdirection. I'm not sure that I believe all the Trust Sessions QAnon type stuff, but in this case, perhaps he's just saying that, where is Rod Rosenstein? He used to be in the news, in the Washington Compost and chicken noodle news like every day, and we, when we made this graphic, Charles, of your, this could be a superb owl barbecue.
I might just you've given me a thought for dinner, minus the head.
But he's actually not done. We did this because the idea was to put a fork in him because he was done, but he's still hanging around, shriveling up like an overcooked, he's going to turn into like a charcoal piece of rope.
An overcooked wiener.
Exactly. But we don't really know what's going on with Mr. Rosenstein.
But this fellow, Patrick Howley, if you hit this, he's had various guises. He's now got his own thing, Big League Politics.
All right.
And he's a good guy. This is a story from last year, and we featured it last year, but his resume...
What's with the feet? See, these super advertised up websites, you can't scroll around that easily.
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. He submitted false documents to the Senate concerning his interrogation of Hillary Clinton. Why don't they send 29 FBI agents to his house?
Oh, it's one at 129. I mean,
exactly.
Because it's not just, I mean, this guy has, maybe he's just incredibly unlucky, but he turns up in all the wrong places. I mean, he was on Starr's team, and he interviewed Hillary Clinton on January 14th, 1998, in connection with the Whitewater case. But he leaves that off his resume. He claims that it ends 1997, and that's material. I mean, if you're trying to think through whether this is somebody who could be on the Clinton team, and his wife, I believe, was worked on in the Clinton Justice Department as well, let's at least be honest. This guy is was the number two most powerful guy in the Justice Department. He's technically, the FBI reports to Rosenstein, not to the Attorney General. I'll give somebody a 2-week slip up on a resume going back 21 years. These things happen. If it doesn't involve the Clintons. I mean, because here you have, the guy goes, eventually he's in, from this role, he ends up in the Justice Department for 4 years. He's the person in the Justice Department who decides which tax frauds get prosecuted from 2001 to 2005, precisely when dopey James Comey and slithery Robert Mueller, are, after about September 2001, in theory, investigating the Clinton Foundation. So you have those links, and then the guy goes from that, the rat goes from that role to be U.S. Attorney in Maryland, where he misses the laureate education, I believe, financial frauds. He misses Uranium One transactions, the full extent of them. He misses Rambaxi. He misses the Clinton-Bush-Haiti thing. I mean, how many things is this guy's just paid to miss scandals that would otherwise implicate? And here we go. See, here it says, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Tax Division, 2001 to 2005. Office of the U.S. Attorney in Maryland as an assistant, 97 to 2001. No, in 98, he still was doing work. He was interviewing Hillary Clinton.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, Charles, that he would choose to leave that off. So I don't know. I'm still very curious as to why we haven't seen him in so long. He was quite active previously.
Yeah, and then this one, the Zero Hedge piece, and I really do commend those of you who are new to this broadcast. If you want a great free source of information that is really on balance, every day there's some funny stories in Zero Hedge, and there's always a lot of information behind them. Remember, with Larry Doyle and his testimony, his story and John Moynihan's story down in that got over 1 million shares, 1.3 million. So that made it the 4th most viewed story of 2018, bearing in mind that testimony occurred middle December 2018. So the story didn't have as much time to be out there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but here, this guy Schiff, who, like Gerald Nadler and others, has the ability to stand up and seem credible. Because when I listen to somebody who was a prosecutor, is a prosecutor.
Adam Schiff, you say?
Yeah,
seems credible.
Well, when he starts talking,
he looks like his eyes are going to pop out of his head.
Yeah, he looks like he could be, Mr. Bean's evil twin. But he always. he's worse than Schumer in terms of going on MSNBC and CNN and NBC and whatever. If there's a camera, you don't want to get between Schumer and this guy and a camera, a microphone. But I heard him the other week talking about, next on the list, Donald Trump Jr. is in serious jeopardy, and he made it seem as if around the time of that lawyers meeting that in June 16th, 2016. You speak Russian well.
Right.
That Junior was on the phone to Senior, and now it turns out that in recent revelations that absolutely was not the case. They know the names of the blocked calls, and it wasn't Donald Trump Senior.
They're upset that he blocked caller ID on his phone.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
He's Donald Trump Jr. I could see him not necessarily wanting people to have his phone number, who he's calling.
Well, many people block it.
Right, I sometimes do it.
Yeah.
And people get upset about that.
Yeah, well, that's life.
These are mostly psychopaths anyway.
Right. So, but these, I think Rosenstein and that Cozy Alliance, they should be ashamed of themselves. Now, here we have this National Review story by Andy McCarthy, which does mention my name in it, and refers to me. What is it? I think he calls me a part-time investigative journalist or something like that, some negative comment. And
perhaps you could get a full-time job soon, Charles.
Yeah, I don't right. Exactly. What was that question again? The resume question? But
what are your goals?
To do as little work as possible. But I think if you were to look at the body of work that has been done on the Clinton Foundation, you and I have done it. Katya Bainova over in Russia has done a lot. Many journalists have worked with me in various guises, in print, media, whatever, and even some people at Fox, but not the New York Times. New York Times can't really get into it. The Washington Post is starting to get into it. But the essence of Andrew McCarthy's piece here is that, the one thing that becomes kind of obvious is that there wasn't any collusion. If Roger Stone started on the effort to get to Assange in whenever it was, July 25th, 2016, that's kind of late in the process, right? I mean, it's not like Assange hadn't been doing a whole bunch of stuff prior to July 25th, 2016 for a long period through WikiLeaks. So,
are you dabbling?
Yeah, I dabble. I'm busy dabbling. Unlike Shepard Smith, who's, he doesn't dabble, or Maggie Haberman, she doesn't dabble. I dabble.
You have occasional correspondence with James Rosen?
I have in the past, yeah.
Yeah. So again, here they are trying to get you into this, Charles. I find it very curious. Who is this person writing this insulting?
It's a good guy, Andy McCarthy. He's a former prosecutor who was in the Southern District of New York. I think he was one of the guys who, I think he might have had a hand in getting the blind sheikh convicted. But just on this issue, I mean, what I would like to note to the people who might want to read this article is that it used to be that it was a good thing for investigative journalists to be curious about things. Now it's like, oh no, we don't. Clinton Foundation? I can't look at that. My editors won't let me do that. Right. I actually had more than one person in the mainstream press tell me, no, the editors don't want us to look at that. Oh, okay.
Really?
Because that's exactly what most people like Seymour Hersh and very famous Pulitzer Prize. If an editor goes to an investigative journalist and says, you really shouldn't look at this obvious problem,
when they start.
That's when they dig in and redouble their efforts. So,
right.
Now, this is a good story by Michael Goodwin, another Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, suggesting, and perhaps hopefully, that the Democrats have already abandoned Hillary. And I think to the extent there are people attempting to provide guidance to the Clinton campaign, the horses are out of the barn at this point. When you have multiple female candidates with credentials already announcing that they're running for president and you haven't done diddly yet. Yeah. Plus the fact that you ran horrible campaigns in 2008, and I would argue it's questionable whether you actually campaigned in 2015-16 or just expected to be anointed.
Why can't I be 50 points ahead?
Exactly.
It's such a funny video where she says that.
Exactly. But you know, this is a lengthy piece in the New York Post, which I'm sure will get a lot of attention tomorrow and through the week, basically saying Hillary's finished.
Yeah.
And I hope she is. I bear this person incredible ill will. Actually, you know what she has done to so many people.
It's a horrible. She's one of the biggest criminals in human history.
Right. But even saying that, I do not understand being on a fool's errand at this point. And it's not that she is 40 years old. Right. It's not that she doesn't have 2, now going on 3 grandchildren potentially. It's not that she's demonstrated that she's naturally good at being a leader of anything.
Right.
Why would you want to take this job on? You know, just suck it up, give it up, you know, enjoy your freedom, because with any luck, you won't have much. You're not going to have much more of that. Now, you've been in touch with Utrice Lead. I had the great fortune of being again on her show on Thursday, the day after closing in. And I said it then, the Clinton Foundation, it's a this is her title actually, is a millstone around the Clintons' necks. This is from
Is
time...
that like an albatross?
Could be that too, yeah. But interesting, this is a very popular radio network. I guess all told she has 1 million downloads, but she has been around for a while with, you know, a certain amount of natural following, and she's had a long career in left-leaning but mainstream radio. I think she was in a senior position at WBAI, which is the left-leaning one here in New York.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Was she there while Randy Credico had his show there?
No, she left a long time. She moved out of there a while back. Randy had his show back in 15, 16, briefly.
I remember he interviewed Julian Assange on WBAI. Why aren't they busting in his door?
No, they did bust in his door, and that's exactly in the same time frame when I was on WBAI with him. Exactly in the same period.
With Randy Credico.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. So this is
up with Randy Credico.
Yeah, there is, yeah. He does do a fantastic imitations of both the Bushes and the Clintons. He's off the cuff, very funny.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think he was a comedian at first.
Yeah, he absolutely was a stand-up comedian. I think he got crosswise with Johnny Carson, and
oh, really?
Yeah, his career had some rough moments. Anyway, if we can go back into that slide somehow.
Who do you think is worse, Johnny Carson or Robert Mueller?
I enjoy Johnny Carson's humor.
Yeah, well, he's dead now, but
still, yeah. Now, this Maduro, I think, he better not be making any sort of long-term plans, because I really do think his days are numbered.
Don't purchase green bananas?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I've never been to Venezuela. My parents went down there actually on vacation once, but
I've been to Venezuela.
Yeah, it was supposedly nice at one point.
I remember I was pretty young, and I remember the I guess I don't know what you would call it. It was kind of like impromptu barbed wire, where on the top of fences they had broken bottles built into the cement so that people wouldn't. Really? I remember thinking, boy, that looks kind of scary.
Your parents took you to the nicest places.
I don't remember what circumstances. I mean, I was a teenager or something. I don't remember what I was doing there. I guess it was a vacation of some sort, but I don't recall.
But I think, you know, this Guaido fellow is not exactly a conservative Republican. I think he's pretty left-leaning as well. But the issue for Venezuela is the people of Venezuela have been suffering a long time at the hands of a corrupt regime. It's the same problem that you see in Iran, the same problem you see in North Korea. These strong people get involved with a country that has resources of one kind or another, and they just, you know, give them to their followers and exploit the people. And instead of getting lessons about Marx from AOC and others, and you know, pushing the United States to the left, I think Venezuela stands as an obvious case study of what happens when you let unregulated left-leaning politics enrich a series of despots. And you know, let us hope that Guaido has enough common sense, if he gets in, to realize that it would be a smart move to have strong relations, economic relations, forget about political relations. Open trade between the United States and Venezuela is definitely in the interest of the Venezuelan people.
My concerns, however, Charles, this guy, Juan Guaido, he went to, I think, American University, and nobody in Venezuela has ever heard of him before. So he's not like some popular uprising.
No, he's the Speaker of the House.
Oh, well, he's not well known among people in Venezuela. I was watching an interview with Abby Martin, who's done a lot of work in Venezuela, and she says this guy's a CIA puppet, and the whole thing is the standard run-of-the-mill.
Is it really?
Undermining the population. I mean, socialism is obviously bad, but what did they say about Salvador Allende, make the economy scream? That seems to be what's been going on in Venezuela for the past several years, so you can really foment revolution by messing around. Abby Martin has done some really excellent reporting. I don't necessarily agree with everything that she says, but she's thorough and she's very anti-corporate, which I agree with. I think these corporations this is all about wanting the oil from Venezuela and not just wanting to steal the oil. Of course they want to do that, but it's about protecting the petrodollar. These countries that don't want to be part of that are kind of trying to get together, Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and the United States. I don't know what we're going to do, Charles.
Yeah, except that I think the dimensions are so large. I mean, the Venezuelan oil basically is crappy oil. It's heavy oil, and it needs to be refined in a more expensive process. So it's not like that light, sweet crude or in Saudi Arabia as well. So when you really dollar it out, it's like saying, people want an alternative to Coke and Pepsi. Good luck with that. There's not. I mean, it's the alliance of the U.S. and the various nations is so big that going in a different direction just isn't going to work for Venezuela. This I was talking with a bunch of different people about whether or not Trump was going to slam this governor of Virginia. And I think, note to Democrats, I don't give advice to really either party, but every minute you let this lame brain utter any more discussion, you're just crucifying your electoral potential here in 2020. This guy is, I was unimpressed with him for a different reason. I was shocked by his comments about, killing babies, after that it's okay, we'll have a discussion. We'll resuscitate.
Talk to the doctor.
No,
keep it comfortable.
Yeah, we'll keep the baby comfortable, and then we'll and then we'll have a discussion with the mother about what to do. Excuse me, are you Satan or are you a doctor?
Crazy.
The simple way to think about it, and I only react this way because I was there for the birth of my two children, and it's a brutal process. It's a tough process on the mother. It's a joyful process when the child is born.
Right.
Those children are so innocent when born. The notion that a caregiver would be seriously sitting there in front on a radio show, a television show, in a calm voice saying, yeah, we'll just, birth and then we'll decide how to kill it or whether to kill it. No, that's not what you're going to do. And I just forget the pictures, which are awful as well, the blackface pictures and the comments and his nickname in high school and all that. Forget all that, which is horrible. You should be bounced out of office for the first problem, just alone. But now you got both, and you still think you should, and you want to earn people's trust. It's like a bank robber coming back to the bank saying, "Look, I want to earn your trust. I can't give you the money back, but I'd like to earn your trust, and plus I'd like interest."
Well, with regard to people asking whether or not Trump is going to slam. I'm not really a gambler, Charles, but you got to give some odds on that because I think it's pretty sure bet that Trump will slam.
No, it will be slamtastic.
Exactly.
It will be very good. I wonder who Trump's going to bring to the State of the Union.
Slammer Bowl.
Right. Then we do have this tweet from James Woods, which is precious.
He is very good on Twitter. It's like I picture him just like sitting there reading Twitter and popping out little gems.
I hope this one comes up.
I don't know why we're getting such slow internet today, perhaps.
Internets.
Maybe all the superb owl watching is somehow hitting it, but perhaps we could imagine what this tweet... There we go.
This Nigerian prince says, I'm personally entitled to $14 million. All I have to do is unfreeze my account and transfer the money to me, send him $20,000. Should I pay in Bitcoin? Wood says, I'd send a check from the Clinton Foundation.
I don't know this Larry Elder. What are we looking at?
Larry Elder is a very funny syndicated columnist, actually.
I have a feeling that's not actually him in the picture.
No, that's not it.
Okay, very good.
And then this Liawatha, I mean...
I like the name you've given her there.
Well, I didn't make that one up, but she, I mean, I saw this on Friday and I was like, really?
Huh.
You know, she apologizes to the Cherokee Nation for DNA test.
Because they said the DNA test was unethical or something?
No,
it's like a wall?
I mean, call it a 1,124th apology. This person seriously wants to be president of the United States? I mean, are you freaking kidding me?
I don't know, she's not going to
No
win.
common sense. And again, you know, I think we've had, and some people will take umbrage over this comment, we've had the recent experience of Barack Obama. Very few senators, U.S. senators, particularly senators with, you know, not that much in the way of accomplishments while they were senator, very few senators do well as president. Elizabeth Warren, I'm sorry. I mean, she's a disaster as a senator.
Lyndon Johnson was a very bad president.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, the issue for Elizabeth Warren and adopting Rachel Dolezal style, you know, the Cherokee or tribal background. The issue is
Rachel Dolezal, that woman who identifies as black?
Right, yeah. The white woman who identifies as black is now being sued for, or criminally prosecuted for welfare fraud as well.
Ooh.
Yeah. But Warren's problem is not only that she appropriated an ethnic background that she doesn't have, manifestly, it's that she did this while she was a law professor.
Right.
In part to jump into the opportunity created at Harvard Law School when they were trying to hand out professorships to people from ethnicities that are not Caucasian. And you know, that is just, that a lawyer would do that, a sitting law professor would do that, right?
Well, it's her entree to Washington, D.C.
Right, yeah, and then serve out as a professor, in quotes, at Harvard Law School, but not address the Indian, minority groups, student associations, not participate actively in that she would then do a cookbook.
Right.
Remember Pow Wow Chow, where her recipe turns out to be appropriated from the Waldorf Astoria cookbook or something.
It's a recipe for disaster, Charles.
I'm going to fly through this page pretty quickly. We won't
Sure.
take all of these because we've done a bunch of this before. But you know, when people think about the Clinton Foundation, and they say, Charles, you know, you're all wet. You know, you don't understand charity fraud. You don't understand charities. These are just a few of the reasons why any idiot who believes, anybody who believes that the Clinton Foundation is a validly organized and operated charity needs to go to every single one of these links. Send me an email, contact me, explain to me why I'm wrong, okay? In this New York Times piece in August, where unease of the Clinton Foundation over its finances, afterward, about a month afterward, the government of Egypt arrested, if you go down the page here, a little bit, arrested Gahad, I think they have a typo there, I think it's Gadad El Haddad, but I may have that wrong.
That's a cool name.
But this gentleman was a senior official of the Muslim Brotherhood, handling the group's communications, but his prior role was working for the Clinton Foundation in Egypt.
Nice.
They had no authority to operate in Egypt.
But they're hiring the Muslim Brotherhood.
You know, I mean, it's just, he worked in Egypt for the Clinton Foundation, established by former President Bill Clinton. No, it wasn't. It wasn't established by Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's name had nothing to do with setting up the Clinton Foundation on October 23rd, 1997, which is part of the problem. So there is a link here. People say, you know, you don't want to talk about Benghazi, you don't want to talk about this, you don't want to. No, you have to talk about the Clinton Foundation. You have to ask, what was the Clinton Foundation doing when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State in league with the Obama administration, starting in 2009, across the many countries in North Africa, and then 2010-11, and ultimately into Libya. What was the Clinton Foundation doing on the ground there? What did the Obama people know about it? Because that was, you know, one of the most important theaters of activity for Barack Obama in particular.
Even more important than the IMAX theater.
Well, for Barack was going on the first apology tour before Elizabeth Warren did, right. Going to France first and saying that what we did was crazy, then going to Cairo and, you know, upending governments around North Africa and the Middle East, trying to push the Middle East towards Shia Islam and towards Iran. That was something that was very much going on, and the Clinton Foundation had no business, was never authorized to do any international work. So how could they hire somebody in Egypt? I mean, it's just idiotic. Then on the 2nd of November, if we can go to this link, boy, oh boy, they're
Really slow today.
You know,
that stuff you're saying about the Muslim Brotherhood, Charles, it makes me think about the Moriartys and stuff that they told me they saw in Libya.
Yeah. Well, if we just quickly, Jessica, can go down this a little bit and punch in the EIN, which 31, next down. Yeah, 31, should pop right up, 158. Yep. And we hit that, and maybe it'll come quickly, maybe it won't.
Sometimes nice how the computer remembers that stuff.
Yeah. Is it down here?
It's spinning.
It's spinning?
It's still thinking.
It'll take us to the bylaws, the version of the bylaws, September 10th, 2015, which gut the Clinton Foundation, just absolutely gut it.
Super slow today.
There was a separate version. New York doesn't apparently yet know about it. There was a First Amendment was done on the 2nd of November. There you go. If you hit this, the First Amendment was done on the 2nd of November, that thing, yep. 2013, and the effect, it did a lot of things, the bylaws, assuming the bylaws actually were perfected. It concentrated power, go down here a little bit. You see this bylaws, organizational rules, click that one. Okay. This is something, this entity...
Sorry, Charles, but look, even her name is crooked.
Right. So, let's stop for a second, Jason. It says at the very top, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation doing business as Clinton Foundation. It had never organized itself properly to do business as the Clinton Foundation, either in Arkansas or any other place.
Are there any filings for a DBA?
There are some filings in Arkansas, but they're not filings in every state the way they should be, and the filings are false and materially misleading.
Because
they're not
it's
done
a charity, they need to file that DBA in every state?
Well, yeah, you want to use, if you want to operate soliciting money using a name other than your real name, you better, if the state allows you to do that, you better fill out the right forms. You can't just type some form up that has nothing to do with the local state law. You got to do it the right way.
But it was neatly typed.
No, it wasn't even, right? You can't get her name typed correctly. But this concentrated power, and we've been through this before, in the hands of the Clintons, the Class A directors. If we go to the very last page, Jason, you'll see, page 23. You'll see, I guess 21, 22. This was filed 21 then. Or before, where is it? 20. Oh, come on now. Where is this? The final signature?
Isn't there a stamp at
the
end?
No, there is that, but I'm trying to get to the date.
Signature page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where there you go. Signed by Bruce R. Lindsay on the 10th of September, 2015. Okay. So that signature, experts among us who can look at signatures, I think we need to go on an exercise with experts of comparing his signatures that are seen in many places. This does not look anything like his real signature. Maybe it is, maybe he changed after the stroke in 2011, but it doesn't make sense to me. And what happens here is Hillary is taken off as a Class A director, leaving only two, Bill and Chelsea. And that's a big no-no. That's a big no-no. That, in my mind, guts, and lawyers' minds, guts the operations. We see this in let's see, did I not put Stewart's in? Okay, we'll get to it in a second. We also have the problem on the 21st of November, if we hit that, the Clinton Foundation refiled for its Clinton Health, refiled a bunch of returns. If you go down this page, this is ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer. If we go down to, say, 2012, you'll see, or another one, you'll see they refile this return in November of 2013 for the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation. They should have done that going all the way back in the parent and in this child. They attempted to try to correct the filing, but they didn't.
That's weird.
In my view, they only made it worse. And that they did it to the bottom of this first page. You'll see it's on November 21st. This is, I guess, yeah, November 15th, 2013 in this case. In others, it's on the 21st. But anyway.
Who is CBiz Tophos?
Tophos, that's it's a firm like BKD. It's a collection of a bunch of accounting firms, and I think they have exposure here. I don't think that they did their homework carefully enough when they forced this Clinton Health Access Initiative to change the basis of their accounting only for years 2010, 11, and then to file 2013 on the changed basis. They should have gone and said, with this Clinton Health Access, you were in existence from September 29th, 2009 to December 31st, 2009. You should have issued a short period 990, and you never did that. So here, why did it take, this is, if you hit this one, this is the Horowitz report, and if you go to page 37 of this.
This is the Horowitz report, totally blank, gray mess.
Yeah.
Page 37.
Of the typed page 37, not the PDF page.
Wow. Okay.
All right, so you're almost there.
Certainly doing a lot of typing to make this report, but nothing really happened as a result of this.
We don't know that yet. So, almost there. Yeah, here you see, it talks about Hillary Clinton served from the 21st of January 2009 to February 1st. It says that for the convenience of the staff, approximately in 2008, they started to use a private email server in their house in Chappaqua. I call bullshit on that. I think they used a private email server in their house in Chappaqua well before 2008, and I think they probably used private servers elsewhere. Right. And this report is, I think, it's a disaster in parts because it accepts the idea that you should begin the investigation too late, right? If you start here in January of 2009 without understanding this context, going back to October 23, 2011, you're screwed. But anyway, this explains that they turned these emails over in December of 2014, right? The supposed missing emails. Now, the Congressional Committee had subpoenaed these emails, and of course the Clinton response using lawyers is, we don't have to do that. We'll just bleach bit, we'll destroy devices while under subpoena. Nobody's going to come crashing into Chappaqua or Kendall's house, wherever he may live, or
burn the place down.
No one's going to do that with 29. But so the Clintons, we got a subpoena. F that. This is our private property. We'll decide what you get. When we want to give it to you. So if we go back into the slide, the question there is, how in the hell? Why did it take Dopey James Comey so much time to come to the conclusion that this needed to be studied? Dopey gets into the FBI on September 4th, 2013. Okay, why does it take him over a year to get interested in investigating what was really going on with these missing emails?
He was busy.
Right. And then we see here, by April 2015, when tax returns are seriously refiled and massive changes, that's a gigantic warning sign, right? You especially for a charity where you run the risk, if you screw up on your filings, of having your charitable status revoked. You don't want to see this many refilings. So by April 2015, roughly 10 days after Hillary announced her second attempt to win the 2015-16 presidential election, the main charities that she's uses to boast about her qualifications and her family's do-gooding activities, main charities are forced to refile. And this is mainstream stuff. This is Reuters reporting it. I warned, actually I had done this story in Breitbart March 16th, about a month beforehand, saying with so many red flags, why isn't the IRS auditing this thing? Yeah. And I would warn, in the few appearances that I did, I'd warn people. I said, look, you do not want to refile your tax returns at all unless you correct the entire record. You don't want to just, sort of do it.
Band-Aid on a heart attack.
Yeah, because that normally the IRS says, wait a minute, you didn't do it properly. So then why did it take the Inspector General of the intelligence community until July 6th to make an issue of mishandling these classified emails.
Was that Clapper?
I don't think so. No. The
Who
Inspector
was it?
General of the intelligence community. It was a guy, we've talked about him before. He may have been intimidated by the swamp, but we have here 28-part document dump people can look at. Clearly, people were exercised that something bad was happening under Hillary's watch, and now you have there's thousands of pages missing from this document dump, but the FBI people understand that there certainly are people in the FBI who felt that the idea a Secretary of State connected to Bill Clinton and a crooked foundation operating around the world, the idea that that Secretary of State would conduct 100% of his or her business using the toilet bowl server company
And the eBay Crackberry.
in an eBay Crackberry is just absurd, And then here, this is what I was looking for before. This is Stuart Dean. We've had him on several times. He's a retired lawyer. And this is an article that was worth reading. It's 10 minutes long, but it explains in great detail that to anyone who cares to try to understand the law, that the Clinton Foundation is arguably not even an organization. Forget about whether it's validly tax exempt. Arguably because it has not gone through the requirements, it is not laid out proper articles of incorporation, proper bylaws. It likely does not have board minutes. It has not followed state, federal, and foreign law. It's not an organization.
It's a disorganization.
Exactly. And this is something, it'll take you 10 minutes or so to read it, maybe longer to digest it, but it's really worth, anyone who has questions about whether the Clinton Foundation is validly organized ought to look at that. Now here, we've talked to you in the past about this vault file here. We've talked about the senior State Department person who had sent a letter to Dopey saying, look, I got real problems with the way, if we go to page 11 of this one, which is easily done by hitting, or whatever.
Hitting what?
Page 11.
Is there a page number thing here?
You got page 6. Yeah, I don't know how you're doing.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a memo to the file on the 22nd of February 2016 talking about this. Somebody came in to present evidence of Hillary Clinton's misuse of classified documents by putting them on an unclassified email system. Okay? Person walks in on the 27th of January 2016. Why it takes
3 years ago.
Why it takes till the 22nd for this memo to be written. I'd like to know from an FBI standpoint, is it normal to have this kind of a thing written up 3 weeks after the event? More than 3 weeks after the event, almost a month after the event.
Yeah.
Could it be that there was intense pressure, political pressure inside the FBI not to have this thing go in the file while the primaries were accelerating, so that Hillary would have enough time to displace Bernie Sanders before word of this thing leaked out to energize the Sanders followers and torpedo Hillary Clinton's campaign once again? I think this is a really important document. And if there are, I'm sure there are patriots in the FBI, we need to understand who this senior State Department whistleblower was. What happened to that person? I hope the person's still alive.
Right.
How many other whistleblowers were there? And why is it that valid efforts, I think, of this whistleblower were shunted aside? And then we have, by April 10th, 2016, Barack Obama appears on Chris Wallace on Fox News and basically says, he didn't think, as President of the United States, he didn't think that Hillary Clinton intended to cause any harm by mishandling classified information if she did that. Isn't that way worse than anything Donald Trump may have done so far? The sitting President of the United States is telling the law enforcement community in the middle of a primary situation where Bernie still has a pulse and a chance of actually displacing her. He's intervening, he's obstructing justice, and he's also attempting to rig the election.
Tee-hee.
Exactly.
They're just kind of laughing it up, yucking it up, Charles.
I guess that's what happens when you do a Cialis commercial together.
I didn't see Alice.
Don't you? The wind up of when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton appeared together on when she was leaving the Secretary of State Department. They did it was almost like a Cialis commercial. It was ridiculous.
That's fine.
So then we turn then to this, I guess I got it wrong, the 9th of June, the meeting with that lawyer. Say that again, you're good at that.
Natalia Veselnitskaya.
There you go, has a ring to it. People may want to remember that that lawyer couldn't have gotten into the country, just by sneaking across the southern border.
Right.
She had to get, I believe, special approval to come into the country for the meeting.
And have sex with the New York Times reporter.
No, that's...
She did.
She had sex with...
Wasn't there some guy named Sexton who she was driving around with?
No.
And a certain 6'5".
No, I thought the New York Times reporter who had sex with a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee staffer was
yeah,
female.
I remember that girl, and
You're telling me there's another one that had...
That's why I'm always making all those jokes about the New York Times having sex with the subjects.
I didn't realize that this lawyer was having sex with another New York Times reporter. But anyway, whether she was doing that or not, the fact remains that the meeting was incredibly suspicious. And it occurred in New York roughly, 3 weeks before the tarmac meeting? 2 weeks before the tarmac meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton out there in Phoenix?
Yeah, Buck Sexton is somehow related to this story. How that's not a porno name.
Buck Sexton's a former CIA guy who's works for The Hill now and has his own show.
Wasn't there some... George said something about this guy having a ton of sex, and his name was Sex. I don't know. I don't pay that much attention.
I haven't heard that before, but...
Perhaps I spoke incorrectly. I retract the statement.
Yeah, Natalia Veselnitskaya. Yeah. Anyway, this whole thing certainly to me looks like a setup, and I think we need to understand who may have been behind trying to make sure that Donald Jr. and these people met with the Russians in this time frame. Who was trying to accomplish this? Why did the Attorney General of the United States allow this lawyer into the country? And who asked, what were the pros and cons on that decision? What did the president know about that? What did Valerie Jarrett know about that? What did the Clinton campaign know about this? To me, this looks like moose meets squirrel setup. It's just obvious.
When they found out, they were looking at her social media accounts and saw pictures of her in New York well after her visa expired or something like that. All these ads on all these pages are just jamming everything up.
Yeah, so if you needed to think about why the Clinton Foundation was a fraud from 2013 forward, this is about there's much more we could talk about, but here's a whole bunch of reasons. You would have to prove to me that none of these, if you wanted to try to shake my view, that none of these things would queer the Clinton Foundation's tax status, and I can tell you that virtually every single one of them would. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back a little earlier. We go to the next page. Okay, these are taken out of the various William J. Clinton Foundation filings, and I think I provide a link. I don't give you the pages there, but I give you the dates. That basically the special agent in charge in New York opened a preliminary investigation on the 15th of February 2001 in accordance with the policy regarding public corruption investigations. And this person, who would be a senior person in the file, says that Denise Rich, I believe is who they're referring to, contributed to, they misspelled the name, it should have had an uppercase T, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. But note how he describes it, a foundation to support the Clinton Library. The FBI does not say this is a foundation to fight HIV/AIDS, or to fight climate change, or to have gab fests around the time of the UN General Assembly. No, the Clinton Presidential Foundation was a foundation to support the Clinton Library. By the 28th of February, the Clinton Foundation has agreed to turn over all the information that it has on its donors, which they claim only were 150 donors, likely through the period 98, 99, 2000. Okay, they're trying to say with a straight face, in the Clinton Foundation, all we got money from in this time frame was 150 donors gave us money to fund this Little Rock complex. We didn't get any more than that, okay? And by the 21st of March, 2001, we find out that the investigation has been broadened. There are actually 3 investigations. And the investigation is into Bill, but importantly in red, Hillary Rodham Clinton, U.S. Senator. Right? They're investigating all the above for public corruption. It's a pretty serious crime. She hasn't been a senator for 2 whole months yet. And she's
quick work of the corruption, Charles.
Yeah, she's good with that. Then by May, we discover that another document which talks about how the foundation is meant to set up to give money to the library. The foundation is an entity which endows and supports programs for the presidential library. By just after Christmas, we learn that 2 things. We learn that the events of September 11th diverted or inhibited the investigation, likely because records had been housed in the New York office. I don't know what happened to the FBI office, where those records may have been on September 11th, but it probably slowed things down. And then it says, however, James Comey was briefed on the 12th of December, and he's enthusiastic about this investigation and supports the proposed investigation plan set forth by the acting U.S. attorney. So, okay, you had information on 150 donors. You had the passage of time. Things happened in 2001 that gave you additional information. Why did you need much more information to conclude anything other than this was a massive fraud? And we're going to show you why in a second. Let's look at the next page. Okay. The exemption was granted to the Clinton Foundation on the 29th of January 1998, based on the information you supplied. It wasn't granted in concept, you do whatever you want. You provide an application, and the IRS says, based on the information you supplied, and assuming your operation will be as stated in your application, we're giving you exemption. And in the same letter, it goes on to say, if you change your sources of support, your purposes, character, or method of operation, you got to tell us, basically.
They haven't changed their method of operation. They've been crooks since day one.
Right. So the application is here. It's linked. You don't have to hit it now, Jason, but viewers can see the letter. They can see the application, or at least a version of it. And one important question, in 6 to part 2, it says, does or will the organization engage in any of the following transactions? And I put in red the ones that are problematic: rental of facilities, reimbursement arrangements, performance of services, sharing of facilities equipment. And the Clinton Foundation says, no, we don't do any of that. We don't do any of that. If they had answered yes, they would have to explain those problems. Well, here are just 4 categories of problems. The second presidential inaugural committee, on which Vernon Jordan's wife, and Terry McAuliffe both had pivotal roles, contributed an overwhelming majority of the donations in 1998, but it should have gone out of business in 1997. So there's reports on that committee and explaining how so much money went from that committee into this Clinton Foundation in 98. How did that happen? Who had custody and control over that money starting in 97? Are we sure that all the money that was in the second presidential inaugural committee was accounted for? And I would say the answer is no. We're going to get to the second presidential legal expense trust in a second, but that was operated by another Clinton Foundation trustee, David Pryor, and we've explained before that this thing illegally filed claiming to be a charity in 1998. It is not a charity. It was an organization, a conduit, where if you wanted to make after-tax transfers of after-tax money to pay the Clintons' legal bills, you could do that. But it's certainly not a charity. Then we know Hillary had the primary and then the general election for Senate, so that's another exempt organization, her campaign committee, to which people would be directly and indirectly connected. Multiple joint solicitations occurred for her Senate campaign, and then Terry McAuliffe was a senior Democratic Party official, and there was a presidential election in 2000, I believe we know about. So there are lots of exempt entities around the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation that may have been sharing personnel and services and doing all these things, but not answering any of these questions properly in the original exemption application, which flags in that application that if you change, if you started out December 23, 1997, and you weren't going to do any of this, but if then things change, you have to tell the IRS. So they didn't do any of that, and the first thing that this great team should have done back in February of 2001 is to say, all right, let's see the Clinton Foundation filings, let's see the correspondence filed with the IRS. What did the Clinton Foundation tell the IRS about all these related party transactions? And you wouldn't need to interview, Mark Rich or Pincus Green or any of these people and do all the work that was done from 2001 to 2005 if you'd instead zeroed in on the Clinton Foundation and said, it's a fraud.
Pincus Green.
That's his name.
That's very unfortunate.
That's right.
Pincus Green.
His mother hated him. Anyway, if we go to so this is an article that in full, a short article, it was in the New Yorker, it came out on the 23rd of July 2001. And I'll just highlight some of this that's funny. It talks about the Clinton Legal Expense Trust, and it describes it as the fundraising juggernaut established to pay off the considerable legal bills of the former president and first lady. Now, I think you can possibly do that properly. You can take after-tax money to bail somebody out, but you have to be really careful how you do it. And there is an argument that can be made that if you do it improperly, that what you're doing is you're providing a lot of income, untaxed income to the Clintons. So in the real world where ordinary people work, if you have a legal bill,
you pay it.
You have to earn the income, pay the taxes to pay the bill, or you take it out of your savings. That's not what the Clintons did. They said, look, we're going to cry poverty. We're going to have our political animals,
steal furniture,
and steal the furniture, right? Cry poverty, and we're not going to tell you about the book advances that we get, these mammoth book advances, and which are far more than the legal expenses. And we're going to let the dumb schmucks among you pay off our legal bills. And if there's a tax problem, maybe you'll have to pay for that too. But
that's crazy.
we still haven't. We're going to do this in later shows. We haven't figured out yet because we have the Clintons' tax returns. We haven't squared up the advances they claimed, which I think Bill was like 10 million and Hillary was 8 million. Those numbers, I don't see them in the Clinton Foundation tax return, the Clinton personal tax returns for 2000, 2001. Now maybe there's some way of delaying them, but experts in the literary field could probably help us with that. But here, the office is established like several days after the Clinton Foundation, the main Clinton Foundation, gets set up, gets its tax exemption. This legal expense trust is created high above the display window of Al's Magic Shop.
That's great.
Right? I mean, it's a good writer. It says here the trust had only one employee, and that this person registered the website clintontrust.com. We're going to have to check that one and see when it was taken. And then the guy allows himself to be quoted. Mind you, this is July 2001, before September 11th, before there would have been a need to do a lot of work. And this guy says, at the last trust, this Charlie Tree showed up with a whole bag of money and put it down the desk. Nothing to worry about there. I mean, there wasn't a whole bunch of
totally on the up and up.
Yeah, all these different people around the Clinton family and the political campaign of 1996, where allegations were Asian money, Chinese money was coming into the Clintons and their people. Nothing to worry about with that. But here it says the trust raised $8.8 million through really year-end 2000. So 98, 99. 2000. And it says that it received more than 116,000 contributions, the bulk of them through direct mail marketing. So Clinton Foundation, this is an easier sell, right? Because you go to your donors and they can take a tax deduction. They claim they raised 150 donations. This legal expense trust got 116,000 contributions. What's wrong with that picture? They claim that this entity had no employees, one guy. How did one guy arrange for 116,000 contributions?
Seems like a lot.
Whereas the Clinton Foundation could only get 150.
What's the name of it? The Clinton
ClintonTrust.com. If we put that into Whois, I don't know what it'll say. You probably have to click, you're not a bot.
Yeah. Clinton probably shouldn't trust it. .com.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going so slow, Charles. I don't know why. I need to get to the bottom of this, because some days it works super smooth and some days it's like this. I'm trying to block trolls from the chat and I can't even.
Yeah. What is?
Okay, it says, who is guard protected, name cheap, Inc. We would probably have to check with important dates. Well, created, this says 10/9/2018. That seems
That's
odd.
odd.
ClintonTrust.com. Name cheap. They usually were using, I think, GoDaddy.
Well, we'll have to check it in more depth. But the point is that they raised, somehow, they're trying to get you to believe. Now, there's no paperwork that we've been able to find on this Clinton Legal Expense Trust. They did file fake 990s. In other words, 990 is the charity form, but they did file that in Maryland and several other states, showing that I think for 98 they raised about $3 million. So this would sort of make sense, about $3 million a year, 98, 99, 2000, until you start thinking it through. In 98, Bill was impeached towards the end of the year. He was acquitted by the Senate, or he wasn't convicted by the Senate in February of 99. So you would think that it would have been possible to raise a lot of money off that, the way the Democrats do things. You know, Bill has been vindicated. You know, you'd think there'd be a lot more money show up in the Clinton Foundation and in this Presidential Legal Expense Trust. And that's the area that this team should have been investigating, I hope will be investigating, and has been investigating, not, you know, sending subpoenas out and having all kinds of, look at the history. Look what, you know, history doesn't show you that it should show you. And then, this is an interesting one in this article. It says, on the day of this report, UPS had carted away 160 boxes of records bound for the Presidential Library in Arkansas. Now, why did the DC office of the Presidential Legal Expense Trust have any presidential records?
Because they hadn't invented bleach bit.
Right, yeah. So what were in those 160 boxes? That's a lot of records. And where are those records now? You know, that's the kind of stuff that I'd be asking, and I hope the FBI has been asking, and some serious investigators need to ask, about what was really going on in this time frame. So if we go to the next page, this is just a quick summary of the records for the main Clinton Foundation. Okay, there was no tax return filed for 1997, which should have been filed. The tax return for 98 was filed the 9th of May, 99, and claimed $3 million in revenues. Tiny expenses, $149,000, but importantly, no program expenses. In other words, they did no work on their authorized purposes.
Well, you don't want to really overdo it.
Yeah, and then for 99, they filed after the election, the 20th of November, they said, yeah, we got another $3 million. No small donations. We had $300,000 of expenses roughly, and we spent $29,000 on program expenses. And that looks interesting until the numbers weenies among us look at that and say, no, wait a minute. 29,185 is almost exactly 10% of 291,840. Did they just wing these numbers? Just invent them? Say, we'll say we spent 10% on this, 45% on that, 45. The answer is yes, that's exactly what they did for the 1999 report.
They winged it?
They winged it. They wing-nutted it.
That's great.
And then for 2000, they put their return in the 28th of August. So it's just as this investigation in the Clinton Foundation is coming in, the House investigation and the FBI and DOJ investigations, they filed this tax return for 2000 across state lines in Ogden, Utah, using the mail, and fail to file it accurately, but claim that only 1% of their revenue is on program expenses. So all in this period, they've raised $14.7 million. This is the same period where the Clinton Expense Trust raises over $8 million. You know, they say they only raise $14 million from roughly 150 donors, only 10% of which are small, where in volume, whereas the total expense and the total program expenses are roughly 1%. They hadn't broken ground on anything in Little Rock. They were in lawsuits. You know, they have this slush fund for the foundation that's not controlled. No one really knows how much money is going towards it.
You know, Charles, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a couple of important things coming up in the comments. Laura Powers is telling us that Lee Stranahan has reported that Natalia Veselnitskaya was here legally and was here to testify in something. I don't know about that. Have you heard any of that reporting from Lee Stranahan?
I have not.
And then the other thing that's of great interest is that Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty are actually watching us right now. And I would say, well, one or both of them is saying that the U.S. Embassy in Cairo under Clinton passed out cash in the amounts of $250,000 to $850,000 to the Muslim Brotherhood leaders. They have proof in a document where the Muslim Brotherhood has their signatures on there, and these men were later found guilty of treason under al-Sisi.
That's true.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. And Dr. Corsi has reported on this when he was with WND.
Right.
Anyway, just thought you'd like to know those items.
No, thank you. And so then in addition, you know, for 2001, the return for 2001 is not put in until the 20th of April 2002, shows another almost 10 million. So all in, they raise $25 million in donations in this period, and they spend less than $1 million, about $500,000, on programs. But query, what programs could they possibly have in 2001? They had no building built.
Right.
Right? So this 97 filing is a big issue for the Clintons. The notion that the amounts of these donations that they declare are just off the charts low and unlikely understate the true amount of money that was sent towards the Clinton Foundation. They probably just said, all right, yeah, thanks for your money. We'll put that over in this bucket. We need to, we need to do some updating of one or both mansions, and Chelsea's got living expenses. And the idea that in '98 there were no small donations sent to the Clinton Foundation at all is absurd. I mean, Hillary and others, there's a mid-year election, you're desperate for money, you really don't know that whether Bill's going to survive, and you had no small dollar campaigning at all for the Clinton Foundation. None. That's what the tax return says. It's just bogus. And then beyond that, did the organization even really exist at this point? You know, in I think '98 they had no people working in it. They never filled out their state paperwork properly in any state, any foreign location. Would a lawyer, applying the same standards that are applied to the Trump Foundation, for example, the tough standards, would they look at this record? And did you need a lot of time back in 2001 to look at the record and say, this thing isn't an organization, it's a concept. It's not a charity, it's a criminal enterprise that doesn't want to show all of its books and records, because if it did, even more people would have to go to prison than currently are on the glide path towards prison. So we drill down just a little bit more deeply in the next page. And let's look at this idea of, there's strict rules. Even in Arkansas, you have to get an audit when you have revenues of $3 million. Even there, you need to do that. So of course they filed nothing in '97. Jason, did they spend any money on accounting in '98 or '99 or 2000?
If none is talking about money, I'd say no.
Right. So the entire time that Bill Clinton was president, okay, they said, no, we're not going to do that.
I don't know anything about that.
That's right, exactly. And then they revved it up in 2001. You got Mueller on the case by September. You got Dopies looking at 2001 by the end of December, and you got Rosenstein. He's over there, justice, supposedly looking at tax frauds. They say, I know what we'll do. We'll hire somebody, likely BKD, and we'll pay him $15,000. That's a fair accounting fee for something that has $25 million in revenues. We'll spend $15,000 on it.
It seems low.
It's very low.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
I used to get accounting bills $3,000-4,000 for a tiny.
Right. It's absurd. So BKD, shame on BKD, could not possibly have done any sort of real diligence on this Clinton Foundation when they became involved in a more serious fashion, in quotes, sometime during 2001, maybe.
They became involved with Truman the Tiger in 2001.
Right, and how can, sitting here, how can the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, how can they allow the Chief Operating Officer of BKD, who is currently the chairman of AICPA, to continue in that role until what happened at BKD and the Clinton Foundation is fully known by the public?
It actually stands for the American Association of Certified Pals with Animals.
Exactly, very good. And then a further question, and the answer is March 17th, 2003, I believe, from memory, but BKD was not actually licensed as BKD LLP in Arkansas, the way I look at the filings, until March 17th, 2003. So how was it engaged in providing accounting services of any kind prior to that time in this name, BKD LLP? How did they do that? Not just in Arkansas, but in any other state where it was doing work. That's a question for people who understand accounting rules. But I think there's a serious problem for BKD here, serious sets of problems. And that every minute that BKD continues to allow the financial statements that are published under their name as having been, quotes, audited, every day that they continue to allow this to happen without repudiating that prior work is a day when I think they come closer and closer to meeting their end as an independent financial firm. So if we go to the next page, the final page, we then get to this question of legal fees. Now, again, there's no filing in 1997, and in the previous one or two back presentations, we explained how the bar associations, even in Arkansas, but certainly in New York and elsewhere, make it clear that lawyers are not supposed to get involved with criminal frauds. And if you get paid to do work for something and you happen to discover that something is engaged in criminally fraudulent activity, you have a higher burden than if I, as a non-lawyer, or you, Jason, as a non-lawyer, are paid some money you're paid for, let's say, advertising. Or
I'm becoming an amateur lawyer, Charles.
There you are. But you look at this and you say, oh, what jumps out to me, the non-lawyer? That in 2000, we know, we've talked about this, by 2000, the Clinton Foundation has been tagged in Mississippi, and its fundraiser, principal fundraiser, later gets tagged, Brian McConnell and Pearson, for illegally soliciting money in several states on behalf of multiple charities, including, I believe, the Clinton Foundation. By 2000, your legal fees have jumped to $150,000, and you try to palm those off as legal fees that should be paid, a portion assigned to programs, a portion to management in general, a portion to fundraising. You're not supposed to be using a lawyer to defend yourself, having found yourself engaged in criminal activity. You're not supposed to charge those expenses off as being valid expenses for the charity itself, the way I read it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would be very dubious about whether it was legitimate to charge off $149,000 in that 2000. But when you get to 2001, that's when the investigations start, the House investigation, the FBI, the DOJ. Suddenly your legal expenses jump to $465,000.
Right.
I'm not buying that one.
Why not? Wouldn't it be more legal expenses if you were
right? But you can't. If you're defending yourself in a criminal public corruption probe,
seems like more than $400,000.
Maybe charge that against the Presidential Legal Expense Trust. I'm just saying these amounts should not be paid by the charity.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Right.
Somebody has to pay.
Can't you not pay legal? Who was getting sued? The charity or Bill Clinton?
Both. They weren't being sued. It was the House and the DOJ and the FBI were separately investigating the Clinton Foundation, trustees, and Bill and Hillary Clinton personally. So the question would be, why should, when you have the same lawyer, that guy Kendall over at Williams & Connolly, involved in so much of this, and he's in your office once a week or on the phone once a week working on this fraud and that problem and whatever, how you allocate that legal bill is it's a science. You should be actually really figuring out the time that every lawyer spent on each matter and segregating it, and you should make sure that if you don't load up the legal bill to have the foundation defray the expenses so that Bill and Hillary personally don't have to actually have any legal costs to defend themselves. You shouldn't be doing that. I suspect that's exactly what they were doing. And rather than looking at anything past 2001, with just what we've given you here on 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, reasonable lawyers and prosecutors should be able to look at this and say this thing was never an organization, therefore could never have been an actual charity. It never got any audits. It never filled out its tax returns properly. Yet it flourished while Bill was president under his protection, under the protection of the many cronies who were inside the executive branch and elsewhere. Afterwards, for some strange reason, George W. Bush and his team decided to do nothing about it. That in and of itself raises a whole bunch of questions. Why was the Bush team so lenient when there was an open investigation? Why were Mueller and Comey and Rosenstein, in theory, investigating, running in place for 4 years, letting the Clintons skate? And then why are these same people centrally involved now persecuting Donald Trump? I mean, can nobody put these pieces together from the inside? Nobody who has access in the FBI to records, can nobody do the job that needs to be done on behalf of the American people to restore the system of justice to being fair and equitable in this country? People, dynastic political families like the Clintons and the Bushes, the Obamas, and maybe the Trumps if they go down this path, should not be given a pass, should not be set above the system of machinery and be able to exploit, in quotes, the gullible masses by setting up things that sound like they're good charities, only to have them be conduits to crooks like the Clintons and others, to feather their personal nest, to fund their political campaigns. That should not be permitted. And it's really incumbent as we enter tax season for the president and the executive branch to lay markers down here. Mueller has been spinning his wheels for way too long. I think what he's been doing by targeting Corsi and others is to obstruct real investigations into their dishonorable behavior, certainly from 2001 to 2005 and afterwards, but
into
maybe
the
even
Clintons'
before.
dishonorable behavior.
And Mueller and Comey
and
their
own dishonorable behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a bigger issue than just a tax form. It's not a technical issue alone, although there are many regulations and laws that have been broken here. And we're going to keep at this until we actually see justice materialize, which I hope is on the horizon.
I hope the same, Charles. I can detect by the lack of additional slides in the way you finished that last sentence that's all.
That could be. It could be.
I'm quite perceptive in that regard. Well, Charles, I thought that was a very good presentation. I mean, I don't know what we can do to spur the people that require spurring to get anything to happen with all this, but there's no shortage of evidence, material, government documents, lack of filings, articles that you bring up. I mean, there do remain a few straggling morons who are in here saying, oh, they're investigating Trump. Why are you talking about Hillary?
Well, I mean, I think it's fair to say that there could well be issues with the Trump Foundation and the Bush Foundation, other foundations. We're at a stage now where the public should be asking questions about why tax policy in the era of the internet and the cloud, why should tax policy encourage, and people who are pro-green, why should we be thinking about putting up more buildings that need to be heated and cooled to study all these presidential records? Why doesn't it make sense to have a number of them that are scattered throughout the country to make it easier to access them, but that these entities are truly run by independent boards, not by supporters of the Clinton family or the Bushes or the Obamas. If you're going to set these presidential foundations up, they should truly be neutral, because over time, these presidents will be studied for many decades and centuries. Over time, passions will cool. People will really want to understand, was Bill Clinton a great president or was he a doofus?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It seems like the presidential library should be specifically disassociated from the president and any of his cronies, because it needs to be, as you said, an unbiased and fair look at all the crappy stuff they've done.
I mean, if you think about it, I'm not a huge baseball fan, but there's the the Baseball Hall of Fame. There are other halls of fame like
They don't
that.
have Pete Rose in there.
Right, well, but why not have a similar concept for presidents? Let's rank the presidents.
Presidential Hall of Fame.
There you
Charles,
go.
I love it. Well, I think you and I have the mission of turning the Clinton double-wide trailer, you know, basically converting it from an IMAX theater and a strip club into the Museum of Fraud. That was the idea, right?
I think that would be fantastic. You got
That
the Museum of Sex here in New York. You have the Museum of Fraud in Little Rock.
Well, and then what you could do is make the top like a mini golf course for real and let people come and play.
Pitch and putt.
You could have each of the holes could be a different Bill Clinton accuser.
Don't.
You could have 18 different.
No.
With that, Charles, I think we're going to wish everybody a happy, superb Owl Sunday. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to remind people that Crowdsource the Truth is viewer sponsored, and there's been a major movement afoot to pollute the internet with fake documents about me, accusations claiming I've done things and been associated with governments and agencies and activities that I've had nothing to do with. These are false accusations, and they've been just so persistent that they actually are affecting the sponsorship on Patreon. So I want to ask the people watching, if you'd like these trolls to succeed and defund and eliminate Crowdsource the Truth, then do nothing. But if you like Crowdsource the Truth and you watch any of the shows that are on all the time, it's really super important that you become a sponsor. You know, and if you're on patreon.com/crowdsource the truth for $1 a month, maybe make it $2. And if you're on for $2, maybe make it $3. Because every person who's on there, you know, when somebody leaves, if somebody who's already there kind of compensates that, it helps a lot. And I'm going to go back to my theory of when you see a troll trolling, I saw somebody doing this, tell that troll that you're going to become a sponsor at patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, or just make a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsource the truth. And I'm convinced, Charles, that that will eventually curtail the trolling because it's counterproductive to their goal, and it'll help Crowdsource the Truth remain financially healthy so we can carry on, and it's going to give people access to lots of exclusive shows that are only available on patreon.com. I am still working to get some alternative sites set up where people can sponsor the show and receive this exclusive content, but it's complicated the way I've got it set up with the security and how the videos get sent there and how the memberships are handled. So that's a bit of a thing. But $10 and higher sponsors are still going to get that amazingly popular Sunday with Charles screensaver. And we're building up a lot of good material for Volume 2 when that comes out.
Well done, sir.
Thank you, Charles. And I will see you Wednesday. You'll be closing in. It takes a long time to close in, but we're closing.
Slowly but surely.
And with that, have a great night, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'll see everybody tomorrow. We're going to have Ole Damagard and Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty. Both of those shows available only to Patreon sponsors. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night.